the name of justice, in the name of peace. But will this killing and fighting ever cease? People ripping off their fellow man, doing everything wrong, everything they can, while they want to harm the man.
Folks, welcome inside the Parisi Palace, high above 3773 East Broadway. This is a live edition of the Jake Feinberg Show, coming on Power Talk. Please go to our website, powertalk.live. Download our free app to your smartphone so you can stream all of our live local programming, including Solomon on Blast, the Jim Parisi Show, and yours truly, the Jake Feinberg Show. Can't thank you enough for making us part of your day today on this beautiful Saturday. And it just popped into my head the other day as I continue my work on a book that's dedicated to, in part, the original Merry Pranksters. That one of the cats that I haven't talked to yet is a decorated guitarist who is fully ensconced in the Los Angeles Hollywood studio scenes in the 60s and 70s, coming out of the psychedelic folk era. He was a decorated original creative composer and a leader in his own right, and also worked with the Smothers Brothers, where he became very close with Mason Williams. And when Ken Kesey came along and they put together this sort of multi-sensory theatrical performance, play-like performance with music called Of Time and Rivers Flowing, my guest was the guitarist on that, on those sessions, and did road work. And quite honestly, the guy has a really deep bag of tunes, and it's all music. Rick Cunha, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Well, thank you, Jake. It's a pleasure being here.
It's such an honor to talk to you. You know, I wanted to know, this is kind of off in left field, but we led in with, I can't stop listening to this soundtrack by Barry White, and you know, that guy was walking around Hollywood. He was homeless for a while before he got into the studios. Did you ever cross paths with Barry?
No, I never did.
Okay. So, I mean, let's just get down to it, man. I mean, when you were coming up, you know, I at 41, I subscribed to the Duke Ellington School of Music. It's all music, and then the subjective part is that it's either good or bad. And I am curious about your philosophy as it relates to music, and when you were coming up, whether labels were as pervasive as they are today.
Well, labels were awfully important back then. They were the only ways to get records done, and you know, getting a record contract was a lot easier back then than it would be today with a label. But, you know, I don't know that there's much of a difference in the overall output of the quality or, you know, sound of music.
Yeah, no, I didn't mean record labels. I should have said genres of music. Were they as pervasive? Meaning, I mean, you ask somebody what jazz is today, Rick, you'll get 20 different answers. You know, the point is that, you know, Louis Armstrong said, hey, you know what? I can't describe jazz, but I know it when I hear it. And so as it relates to folk rock, psychedelic folk, rock and roll, were label, not record labels. Record labels drove consciousness through, you're exactly right about that. I'm talking about genres, labeling of music itself. When you came up, did you feel like it was less restricted than it is today as far as labeling, oh, that's this, oh, that's this, that kind of stuff? That's what I mean.
Well, there were labels then too, so you know, I think the labeling is going to stick with us. And for me, you know, I kind of grew up in a country music, pop music, folk music world, and didn't really stray too far from that.
I guess, were you an autodidact? I mean, did you learn music by ear?
Yes, I did. I, actually went to school at about, when I was about 40, and actually studied it then. But up to then, I'd been, well, I can't say I was self-taught because I had a steel guitar teacher when I was about 10 years old, and that was Ernie Ball.
Wow, steel guitar.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
Yeah, but you weren't part of the academy. I mean, they're turning out droids today. Not that these cats don't have monster chops or facility, but man, I mean, you were not going to one of these. In any event, the schools that did exist at that time, North Texas State, Berkeley School of Music, not like Cunha was trying to be Kenny Burrell or something, but the point is that those cats had as much experiential learning as they did in the classroom, and today it's all classroom. Anyway, I didn't mean to cut. So you had some lessons, but you weren't part of the academy.
No, I wasn't formally trained at all.
Did you tend to put on the radio and listen to all types of music and try to learn every song and every key? I mean, I'm curious about how your ears grew the most when you were younger, because this is a very important point, because younger cats, they're learning to read by sight now, so their ears get locked. Your generation, just because of the fact that, let's face it, rock was still a burgeoning label. I hate labels, but rock was still a relatively new term. So a lot of genres of music, funk wasn't even part of the lexicon. So the point is that you guys learn by ear. And that, to me, your ears were huge. I mean, you could really pick up on stuff, and you could create your own tunings, and you could hear stuff that a lot of modern-day cats, unless they're really on the bandstand a lot, which is hard because there's not a lot of gigs anymore, your ears grew. Your ears were huge. Can you talk about how your ears grew as a kid?
Well, I hope they did.
Well, I mean, you know what I'm getting at, though, right? I mean, you weren't sight reading and just playing what's on the paper. You were
Right.
You had to play what you heard, and that's the difference.
Yeah, when I started doing studio work, though, I mean, you had to go with the paper. So, but yeah, I just learned stuff from the radio and records, stuff, the kind of that way.
So, can you talk about? I mean, what were some of the cats that you were getting off on growing up? I mean, what was some of the music, some of the bands you were interested in?
Well, I loved some of the guitar players, some of the steel players. Ernie was a great steel player.
Ernie Ball.
Yeah.
What about the cats in the like Lloyd Green? Were you fast? I mean, were those cats on the map? I mean, as far as like records, would you get like records from Nashville and sort of be looking at the accompanists? Who were some of the other cats that you were really trying to channel?
Well, I really didn't. I wasn't trying to channel anybody back then. With with some exceptions, I really loved the Carter family, for example.
Why is that?
Just I loved the songs, the storytelling of country music, and the Carter family was kind of the beginning of that. So that's, I would say, they probably got me into that aspect of music more than anybody else. But through that, looking at that, I heard a lot of other stuff. So also, it's been so long, brain is capable of remembering.
Well, you're doing a great job, and this is part of the. And this is not about preservation, Rick. This is about promotion for future generations and their understanding of how real music is made. You talk about the stories of country music, the Carter family. Just for the layperson who's listening around the world, were they speaking about Western Hemisphere country music, more specifically the United States? Was that? I mean, I'm not really hip to them. Were they?
Yeah. They were a country band in the the end of the 1920s, and they sort of showed the RCA Victor the way to make money selling records to, some of the country folks. And most of the material was older songs from Ireland and England, and just variations of folk music. And
but what you're saying is they were from the old world, though. They were not from the state. They're from, because I want to read you this quote that it's a great engineer up in the Bay Area and a musician, Dan Healy, and he was most notably the engineer for the Grateful Dead. But this is what he was talking about, is that he said folk music was inspired to my generation by the Kingston Trio. They were the first group that really delved into world music. Back in those days, they caught a lot of flack for it because it was outside of the ordinary. Dave Guard traveled the world studying different cultures' music. He brought it back. Look at all the Kingston Trio songs. Most of them are based on some foreign land. It was really the storytelling part of the Kingston Trio that made it the folk music thing. They were all stories of folk tales, but they were folk tales from everywhere but America. Right? You dig? I mean, can you talk a little bit about some of these, even one song that was inspiring to you? I mean, this is really important to me, just because of the fact that, there's a lineage to all this stuff. It's just fascinating.
Yeah, well, the Kingston Trio were the pop forefront of a movement towards towards old folk music, and it was a kind of the Pete Seegers and some of the older artists of the day, and they brought it to the forefront, and people liked it. So, the record Tom Dooley, which came out in, 1958, I believe.
Wow. So what now? What did that? Can you riff on Dooley a little bit? What was salient? Was that a protest tune?
No, it was just an old, kind of a old-timey song about a guy dying at the, being hung. And I love the Kingston Trio as a young person because of their just chutzpah in going all these different places and coming up with all these interesting story songs that we were losing at that time. If you go back to the 50s, most of the music you would hear had some kind of a story to it. And rock and roll sort of, clouded that story up a little bit. And here were the Kingston Trio out singing these old stories that somebody else had written many, many years ago. So
when you say clouded up, because they were talking about, I lost my baby, I love my baby, like it was kind of superficial lyrics, or and who, the lineage before that was the Seegers, or Bill Monroe, country, bluegrass. Is that, explain how rock and roll clouded that lineage of
Well,
storytelling?
It was, if you go back to the 40s and 50s and listen to pop songs, let's think of one, maybe You Belong to Me.
Right.
There's a good one.
Okay.
Just a song that had a beginning and an end and told a little story with a nice melody. And pop music just kind of made a little detour in the 50s from that. And for me, the folk music of the 60s replaced it. So
Interesting. I mean, you're talking about Little Richard, Fats Domino, Elvis kind of cats, or is there other people in the pop 50s? The 50s to me is Stan Getz, Sonny Stitt, and Dizzy Gillespie. Just ripping. But what was the bop? What was the pop element to it? The cats that I mentioned, the R&B rock cats.
Well, just for me, it was just pop music at the time.
Right. Well, what was that pop
music?
music? I was well before I was conceived.
Well, you're talking Elvis and who else?
I'm stretching you out. Yeah. No. I mean, but I guess my point is that they were coming at it from a more. I don't want to say superficial, but more shaking Chuck Berry maybe? Chuck Berry was in there too?
Well, Chuck was part of that era, absolutely. And, for the most part, he and Elvis were still hanging on to the story songs, but just, putting them to a different beat. But there was kind of pop music was awash with, I don't know what you'd call it, kind of a whitewash of stuff.
That is fascinating. Wait, this is unbelievable. I mean, because, it's funny. I interviewed Johnny Cash, definitely not more country than that, anything else, but I remember interviewing his drummer W.S. Holland, and that dude said that at Sun Records, the worse musician you were, the better off you were to get in. They wanted skiffle players. They wanted cats that didn't really know how to play, except obviously there was a couple of amazingly accomplished guitar players. But I'm curious about did you when you sort of go into the milieu of early 60s folk, and then when people plugged in and the Beatles came in 65 and the British invasion and that kind of stuff, and you had a lot of people who might have had, sort of intangible gifts, ability to have like a good inner time feel, but they weren't really professional musicians. They weren't really musicians. Was that when you kind of got on board? Not that you weren't a musician, but that you were basically marinating in folk clubs and places where people just were, I mean, for lack of a better word, they were kind of skiffling. I mean, they were just, learning on the bandstand.
Well, that's kind of how it was. Yeah, I had a duo where I played guitar and my partner David played auto harp, and
wow,
we did folk music in Hawaii back in like 63, 64, and that was the beginning for me. When I could make $15 a night at a club, and that was a whole day's wage for anything else, so kind of showed me the way.
But were you guys, I mean, is it fair to say that you were kind of working it out on the bandstand, working out tunes on the bandstand, and you were still getting paid for it. It wasn't like a formula trip where you were just playing the same song the same way every night.
Did our homework and learned, would try to learn a new song every day. And it was great fun.
I'm looking here. I've interviewed Lester Chambers, Barry Melton, Taj Mahal, so many of these guys, Jim Kweskin, and here it is, Rick Cunha, Hearts and Flowers, Bernie Ledden, Larry Murray, Dave Dawson, Rick Cunha. When did that band come together?
Hearts and Flowers came together in, what was it, 65?
Oh, man. So you had come back from Hawaii at that point, and...
Yeah, I had come back, and then my partner, David, came back.
Dave Dawson?
Yeah, David.
Is he still with us,
Dawson.
by the way?
Yes, he is.
Oh, great.
He lives out in New Mexico.
Beautiful. All right, yeah, continue. So Dawson and you were marinating in the beautiful islands of Hawaii, and then you came back to L.A. Continue.
Yeah, and we met Larry Murray. Larry was running the hootenannies at the Troubadour on Monday nights, so that was a meeting place for people back then. And David and I played and got together with Larry and started a trio, and that was Hearts and Flowers.
So let's see, that was really, looking at it, there was no percussive instruments. There was no rhythm section, right? It was guitars, auto harp, and vocals.
Yeah. We had a bass player that we added, Terry Paul.
Was he a washtub bass player, or
No, he was
upright?
He played electric.
Oh, he played electric.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then we had a drummer. When we went out we did a record for Capitol.
You did?
And,
Oh boy, I need to know who the drummer was. It Blaine?
No, Hal didn't. Hal didn't play on that. What was his name? Really good black drummer.
Earl Palmer, maybe?
Yeah, Earl Palmer.
Palmer played. Are you kidding me? That is sick.
Earl played, and Toxie French played. They were great sessions. We had I think a 22-piece session at one time.
What? Wait, hold on for a second. I just want to be clear about something. It mentions the mercurial Bernie Ledden. How did he find his way into this?
Well, Bernie was a friend of Larry's, and in 1968, I kind of got tired of the group and was going to go to Europe. And Larry said, well, we'll get Bernie out to take your place. So Bernie came out and stayed with me for a couple of weeks, and I showed him my parts. And then he took over from my standpoint in the group. So that's how Bernie got in there.
When you, this actually, Hearts and Flowers, I don't know how many albums you made, but now is the time for Hearts and Flowers. This is in June of 1967.
Yeah.
And, you're doing Donovan covers and Tim Hardin covers and Carole King covers. But was that your first time in the studios?
Well, it was we had done a round of recording before that.
You had?
Yeah, with another producer with Gary Usher.
Wow.
And that was a very convoluted deal. And we, in fact, released, and nobody could find it. So, but the Capitol sessions were, my first real professional studio experience. And it was great.
Well, let's put this piece of music in here for Rick Cunha. We're so blessed to have him on the program, and then we'll come back and break it down.
Okay.
Feinberg Show brought to you by Abbott Taylor Jewelers, Craig Pretzinger of Allstate Insurance, and Dr. Butch Diggs of Diggs Dental. And can't thank them enough for allowing us to play songs like that for the incredible Rick Cunha. 1, 2, 3 rhyme and carnivore time, THYME. So you were really feeling your oats at that time, my friend.
Yeah, that was. We all got to do an original song on the album, so that one was mine.
When you think about germs for a song, I mean, just on a more macro level, a lot of people have different styles of writing, or they have bursts of inspiration, but ultimately, what was the germ for 1, 2, 3 for you? Where did that come from?
It was. I was listening to Charles Aznavour,
right,
at the time, and he had and Willie Nelson too. Willie was a writer who went to different places in his early writings, and so I guess that's where that came from.
What do you mean he went to different places in his early writing?
Well, lyrically, he didn't take the, he had a song out back then called One in a Row.
One in a Row.
And it was, just it was lyrically totally unpop and, made very little sense unless you read the whole thing. And it was, I don't know, it was just interesting to me. And I've always taken a kind of a left field look at lyrics.
And I love that, because my whole show is way out in left field. And when you say left field, I mean, is there a way with prose that you can talk about the sort of the way that you would construct lines that were not authentic to you, but not mainstream or commercial?
Oh, geez, I don't know if I can. I don't know if I can think of anything I've written that.
Well, like on Cunha tunes. I mean, that's devoted. Those are your tunes. I'm not saying. I'm just saying in general. When you say a word like Tim Buckley, to me is left field, not in the sense of he had the folk aesthetic. Joni Mitchell was left field just because of her open tunings. So how was Rick Cunha left field?
Well, I don't know, just lyrically, I would say. Yeah, that's about it. I think that's as far out in left field as I got.
Do you remember when Dylan, or was there any sort of? Do you remember when he plugged in? When he not just plugged in, but he had a trap drummer at Newport. Was there any ripple? Do you remember when you first started using a trap drummer? I mean, in the folk setting for so long, there were no traps. So basically, you had to have really good inner time feel. Everybody had to rely on their own inner time feel. And and I mean, like, what was the transition on the West Coast to when the drummer became a mainstay? even in live settings? Because I don't know, you played the Troubadour, but I mean, I've interviewed David Lindley a bunch of times, Jim Queskin. I mean, those cats are playing at the Cat's Pajamas in Arcadia and the Ash Grove, and so I know you were rolling around to all these different clubs, and I don't think you had a trap drummer, but do you remember when that started to assimilate? Because I think Albert Grossman and Dylan almost came to blows over that.
Well, we had a drummer with Hearts and Flowers in our, in the second half of our careers, our short careers. And there were 5 of us, and but that, country music typically had a drummer. Some of the bluegrass that we played and old-timey music didn't, and that would have been the Bill Monroe style of music with banjos and fiddles and mandolins.
Well, let's talk about that for a minute. I mean, when did you? What was your bluegrass outfit? Was it with Dawson and Murray and these cats?
Yeah, that was kind of our beginning.
Really?
Yeah, we just loved bluegrass, loved country music, and we're trying to move it into a more modern place. So that was our first album.
Did you get a chance to hang with any of these original masters like Scotty Stoneman or Bill Monroe? Or because those guys were so accessible and so beautiful, such beautiful people. They were pretty hard on their cats, but I mean they'd stop and drop some knowledge on people. I mean, did you get a chance to hang with these guys?
Well, to some degree, yes. We played shows with Earl Scruggs, for example. I knew Earl pretty well.
You knew Earl Scruggs?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So what? I mean, how did that? He just would roll into the Troubadour, or you'd open for him? How did that? So Hearts and Flowers, or did you meet him on tour, or how did that work?
Well, we actually opened for Flatt and Scruggs at the Troubadour in, must have been 1966.
Wow.
As a trio, or just the 3 of us. And then Earl had left Lester Flatt and started a band with his children called the Earl Scruggs Group. When I started playing by myself after leaving Hearts and Flowers, I would open shows for them when they came out here. So that was my way of getting around Earl.
Wait, so would you open with your own band or just solo guitar vocal?
Just solo.
Wow.
Or, sometimes I'd bring a fiddler. I'd been playing with Mason Williams back then, and Mason had a good fiddler from North Carolina, Bill Cunningham.
Bill Cunningham. Unbelievable.
And Bill would play with me, and whoever was close would play with me.
I mean, it was such a Southern California was a hotbed of this bluegrass and country Americana music at one time that you were coming up in. Did you know the pedal steel player Bill Keith?
By name, yes. I didn't really know him. I met him once, but
he told a great story to me in one of our radio interviews about playing. Because this Earl Scruggs, I mean, those cats when they went up to the Bay Area, they were playing the Avalon Ballroom and the Carousel Ballroom, and and he, and Bill, so they got to know each other because I think the Queskin Jug Band shared some bills with them, and so Bill Keith had made a batch of pot brownies and was driving back through Texas and stopped off at Earl Scruggs' house, and his wife was there, and Earl was talking about playing the Avalon up in Bay Area, and he said, there's all this pot smoke in the air, and it was just, not necessarily turning him off, but he's like, I just don't do that stuff anymore. And Bill's like, well, you don't have to smoke it. You can eat it. I have some brownies in the car. And so Earl was like, wow, this is, interesting. So, Bill brought them in, and he ingested a brownie just to show him that he was going to, didn't freak out or anything. And Earl ate a brownie, and and then about a half hour later, I forget his wife's name now, but he called for his wife, and he said, the TV's out of color. I don't know what's going on here. And his wife said, but Earl, the commercials in black and white. So it was just this million. I mean, Rick, it was like this, very. I'm not saying it was innocent, but it was in some ways. And I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about your experiences with legal psychedelics.
Legal psychedelics.
Absolutely. When you talk about there was a period of time where, especially when the government was doing these tests, these experiments about taking blood samples. I mean, this wraps into the Kesey thing. Kesey was an aide at the VA, but they were having this experimental situation where they were giving these guys. They didn't know exactly what they were getting, but it turns out it was capsules of LSD, and but in very controlled settings. And you could also at that time or around that time go to places like the League for Internal Freedom in San Francisco and buy, similar to medicinal marijuana today, but you could go and buy legal LSD. And it was the most pure stuff. It was coming out of Sandoz. It was coming out of Europe, Sweden, Switzerland. And, so everybody, and then ultimately at a time when you go back, you were talking 66, but you go back to 65, that was the Watts acid tests. And basically, LSD was going to become, the writing was on the wall that it was going to become illegal later that year. But it was prevalent in all scenes. And I'm just wondering about your experiences with it.
Well, I took it, let's see, it would have been 1964. Lived above me that was a college professor, and he had arranged to get some, and my girlfriend and I took a full dose one day.
Wow.
And it was great. It really sort of turned my life around in the way I looked at things. And, I always realized that the way I might be looking at something, there was another way of looking at it. And that's what LSD showed me.
Is there a way for you to talk about the way you viewed this sort of finite society before LSD, and then maybe a revelation that afterwards, because I understand what you're talking about. It altered your consciousness. It all, the doors of perception were open for Cunha. So
and that was kind of the gist of it. I just realized that there were different ways of seeing the same thing, and that my version and somebody else's version of anything might be different, and I'd learned to respect that. So it was that simple.
It was well articulated. You know, Mason, if I remember correctly, I've done a couple interviews with that cat, and he kind of was, for lack of a better word, I don't want to say talent scout, but I mean, he was going to folk clubs when he worked for the Smothers Brothers and identifying talent, seeing cats that could, both play music and entertain, and, did a lot of discovery and whatnot. And I'm curious about how you guys cultivated your friendship and relationship.
Well, I knew Mason back in kind of his early days as a folk singer, and I met him at the Ice House out in Pasadena.
Right.
It would have been when we were doing our Hearts and Flowers thing. And then in 1969, I was musical director for Jennifer Warnes.
69? That she was on the map in 69?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
She had just finished up a run of Hair, the musical Hair, and was going out on the road. So I went out with her, and she was managed by the same company as Mason. Mason had Classical Gas in '68.
That's right.
And was getting set for a tour in '69, and decided he wanted Jennifer to go along with it. So I went along with her and then played with him. So that's how we became friends, and we still work together.
So the guy, I mean, do you know Don Latarsky?
Yes.
He's a dear friend of mine. I love that cat so much, dude. A genius cat. I've done a couple of Facebook Live interviews with him, but I mean, it's like really interesting. So, what was your role with Jennifer? I forget what you just said there. You were doing what for her?
Well, I was her musical director.
Okay.
Which meant when the two of us played, I played guitar for her, and if we went in and expanded the group, then I'd write charts for the musicians and like that. If we did a radio show or a TV show, something like that.
And then, so you met, and then you met Mason at the Ice House, but basically, at that point, you guys started to go on a double bit. Mason was like, I like the way you accompany her, and I want you playing guitar on this as well.
Yeah, I mean, we were all out there, so it was silly not to join in.
I mean, I'm curious about like the Mason is so well, he's just really in the clouds. He's just a beautiful cat, and he's just always riffing and sharp and funny. And he said to me that, and I want you to just riff on this. He goes, he goes, my friend Ken Kesey always used to say it's easy for anybody to be clever, but what really makes somebody special is if you can be magical. And he said the two greatest people that he met in his life were Pete Seeger and Ken Kesey, because they accepted all of humanity, warts and all, and in fact advocated for everyone, and a very inclusive environment in different ways, obviously. And can you talk a little bit about the magic of Mason Williams, and in your mind, what made him? Everyone just says, "Oh yeah, Classical Gas," because that's the most popular thing that he's known for. But he was a tremendous writer, and a tremendous. I mean, he wrote for the Smothers Brothers, and he had all this cross collaboration going on, and I wonder the fact that you still work. What do you still get off about working with him today? What is his genius?
Well, Mason is just a visionary, and he's somebody that puts everything down in writing or picture or something, and then gets back to it 20 years later. And, where most of us have long forgotten, he'll pull out something and say, well, I remember this from back in 1970, and I think it's a good idea. But Mason's a visionary, and he understands people too. So that was, his affection for Ken and Pete Seeger too. That was.
Did you get to meet Seeger at all?
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about Seeger? I mean, Seeger, man, that guy, boy, man, I mean, those are the musical heroes that we desperately need. In our society.
Yeah, that's true.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, that guy was on the street corner with a, fire in a garbage can, singing about workers' rights. I mean, I guess, was there an element at all in your performing with Mason of social activism at all? I'm not, fully ensconced in his, or even in your music. I mean, was there, was it more than just music? Was it about getting people to think about their role in society and as their civic duty?
Well, over the years, it certainly has come to that. We did a lot of benefits, and there was always a political bent to any of the groups I played with, and it kind of goes with who you are and what you're doing.
Yo-Yo Man, you were in Nashville. I mean, were you in Nashville when you recorded that album or that song?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So how did that work? Because you were, marinating in, Southern California.
Well, I had a friend. Trying to think of my good friend's name.
That's all right.
Ken Mansfield.
Mansfield
had been with us in Hearts and Flowers as a kind of a backdoor manager, and we stayed friends. And in 72, he took me down to Nashville, and we cut that Cunha Nashville back then. It was just a treasure trove of great musicians, and
Oh, sorry.
you still there?
I sure am. Yeah, no, I mean, they affectionately refer to it now as Nash Vegas. It's gotten kind of blown up, but this is like, I can't even imagine the Outlaws, because there were real outlaws out there. I mean, Waylon, Willie. I mean, these guys were just. This was the real deal. I mean, today they dress up the guys to look like cowboys, but back then they really were cowboys.
Well, they Waylon wasn't a cowboy and Willie wasn't, but they came pretty damn close.
Wait, hold on. This is interesting. You I'm not saying, I'm not challenging you, but you don't think they were? I mean, not in the sense of like playing actors in country western films or spaghetti westerns, but I mean, like, as opposed to like what was coming through them, in their authenticity as a rugged pioneer, as opposed to today when you have people that are propped up to look like something, but they're not really what they are. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, you have pop stars today that can't even perform live, Rick. They don't even have the chops to perform live. The lack of authenticity is dangerous for our society, because if people, I mean, I don't need to tell you this, but I mean, I guess that's the point. I mean, maybe Waylon didn't have a farm, or he wasn't, a rancher, or a true cowboy, but he was singing from true life experience, just like the Blues Cats were singing about really dark and heavy times, or the Tin Pan Alley Cats and all that stuff. It was very authentic. And today it's like somebody looks a certain way and has a certain amount of Twitter followers or whatever. They can get into the studio and say, "Oh, how did I sound?" The engineer said, "Well, terrible. Come up, we'll fix it."
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. I mean, that's where we're at,
Yeah. Well, they were, Waylon was just a great singer and a great writer, and he lived the life he lived, for sure.
I just want to tell you, this is one of the most inspiring lineups on Cunha Tunes, 1974. Now, this was cut in Nashville, you're saying, or was it also cut in Los Angeles too?
Let me think. I think one or two songs were cut in Los Angeles.
Because this is a smorgasbord of. It makes sense because you have the late great John Guerin and Larry Carlton on a couple of tracks.
Yeah.
And Joe Osborne, and those are the L.A. Cats, and then you have Briggs and Kerrigan and Reggie Young, and those are the Nashville Cats. So you definitely did this. Let me ask you. I am obsessed, and my first book came out, and I'd like to send it to you, and get your hands around it, because I'm fascinated with before interconnection, full interconnection. We had all this regional sounds, all this regional music, and clearly you went to Nashville to get a certain sound as opposed to the Southern California sound. Can you say that there were definitive regional sounds? There were regional rhythms everywhere, but was there a Nashville sound? Is that one reason that Mansfield?
Oh yeah, very much so.
And how did it differentiate itself from, let's say, Appalachian country music, or country music that was, or bluegrass jug band music that was being made in California? Was it the rhythm? I mean, what made it regional?
Well, out there, it's just it's traditional music. So that's where a lot of the musicians started with it, and just grew up with it. And whether it's blues or some of the country, the old time country stuff, in country records, and just got an organization together where you'd go in and they'd do 3 songs in 3 hours, and you'd be done when you came out of the studio. And they prided themselves on that. Whereas in L.A., you'd go in for 3 days and not get anything.
But were the budgets as voluminous as they got? I mean, because in the mid-'70s, I mean, that's when Steely Dan was getting $500,000 for I mean, these guys were just sitting in the studios for weeks.
Yeah. I can't remember what that album cost of mine. I think it was maybe $15,000 or maybe $20,000, something like that.
So let's just, where the nit meets the grit here. I'm looking here at this insane group of characters. Byron Berline, Hal Blaine, Dennis Caffey, Ken Kesey, Don Latarsky, my dear friend Art Maddox, and Rick Cunha in this band. I'd like you to talk. I mean, Mason was going up to, now. Did you? When was the first time you went up to Eugene to see Ken Kesey?
Well, let's see. Mason was doing a Christmas show in Eugene, and he'd been friends with Kesey for a while. Kesey was living out on the coast and in town, and Mason just included Ken in the process, and they did it like a TV show. The whole show was kind of written like a TV show, and Ken had a major role in it, and I guess everybody did. But that was my first experience with Ken.
So you didn't. I mean, one of the revelatory things for me, just talking to some of the remaining original Merry Pranksters, is that Kesey was in fact he was very much wanting to be an actor, but Paul Newman, with his blue eyes, beat him out. And so he had gone down to L.A. originally before going back to become a writer, and you didn't know him in L.A. at that time.
No, I didn't.
So this is what Mason told me in our second interview. He said, I had a place up in Oak Ridge, and Ken lived in Pleasant Hill. I knew about him from books, and I had read his books. I found out where he lived, and one day I stopped by just to introduce myself. We sat outside, and he had a parrot who was chewing wood off the side of his house. We had a couple of swigs of whiskey, and I told him in the river show that I'm doing, since I play guitar and it's mic'd, I'm sort of stuck behind the microphone. What I need is somebody who could be more like an actor, someone who could be on stage and move around and have some motion. Also, I needed comedy bits that I could engineer for you to do. Being a writer, I mean, it seemed like it was in his wheelhouse. But, I mean, Mason was playing guitar, but can you talk about your role? I mean, were you playing improvisational leads, or what were you doing in this band, in the River Show?
Well, in the River Show, that was...
I'm sorry, because you were talking about a Christmas special, and that was...
Right.
So you were based,
they were both going on at the same time.
So I just want to be clear, like, the Christmas show was basically you were playing the Christmas songbook, right? Is that fair to say? You were just kind of rolling?
Yeah, it was an extended version of the Christmas songbook. and Ken was part of that, was part of those shows.
Now, so this is important.
We did 3 or 4 of them back in the 80s, I guess. I'm not sure.
Where were the performances held? Like the Holt Center, or like where were they going on?
Well, in Eugene, there at the Hulk Center, but we also played up in Salem. Also played up in Portland.
Unbelievable! This is revelatory, Cunha. I mean, so can you talk? Did Kesey dress up as Santa Claus? Did he dress up as Santa?
Well, he dressed up as Santa.
Say again?
And then,
I'm sorry. I missed that. Did he dress up as Santa Claus or
yes?
No? Okay. So and then what do you remember about him adding to that Christmas special before the River Show?
Well, the first show, where was it? It may have been the Portland show that Kesey dressed up like Santa and came out and asked the crowd for money for homeless.
Whoa.
And
whoa.
He had some college kids come down, and they got a couple of $300 or $400 or more, and Kesey took it and went into the homeless section of town and gave it away.
You were witness to this?
Yeah.
So, like, was being such a improvisational actor that he was this something that was planned in advance, or did he just riff it off the cuff?
No, he planned it in advance. It was part of the, part of the deal. That was part of the show.
So, and then was the whole band with him when he went into the homeless?
Nope. He had a cameraman with a TV camera follow him down.
It was a television station, or was it just a regular cat with a camera?
Well, I'm a little fuzzy.
But I guess the point is that maybe he would want to put some sort of public spotlight on it. I'm wondering if it was somebody from the TV station, but you actually went with him into this area with the homeless, and what?
No, we were still doing the show.
So
we were doing the show. He, in the interim of the show, in the intermission, he came out and said, "Let's all give up some money for the homeless in town." And people grumbled and smiled and applauded and, just went through all this emotion. And then he had these kids going up and down the aisle collecting money, and they gave it to him. And while we were back on stage playing the second half of the show, he was out giving it away.
Oh, man. Rick Cunha, you made my week, man. This is the most beautiful thing I've ever heard of it's that Keynesian philosophy of saying, well, we all know Christmas is this gluttonous holiday when everybody receives presents, material stuff, but yet there are people amongst us that have nothing. So, let's show some compassion and give to the homeless. But you said that there was quite a mixed reaction in the crowd. I mean, they had already paid a ticket to come see the show, and here they're asked Kesey, even though he was an iconic figure in that state, up and down the state. They were grumbling. You said there was a mixed emotions.
Well, it was a total mix of emotions, and he actually pulled it together. And
did you remember what he said? Did he appeal to? You don't want to bloviate, but did he? Was there a way that he appealed to people to sort of have them at least? Maybe they'd be grumbling under it, but they came around recognizing that he was doing it for the right reasons.
Well, I think everybody realized that, and that's why they were grumbling.
I dig.
And he had a Santa costume on that was a little ragged.
It was a raggedy costume.
Ragged Santa.
Ragged Santa.
Yeah. And it was quite an experience. I think it kept us from playing Portland the next year.
Wow.
The founding fathers of the symphony weren't going to.
They were furious about that.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. So, is this about 1983, or do we have a year on this? What out there? What, do you have any idea of the year that it might have been?
Well, it was in the 80s someplace, I think.
Sure.
Maybe late 80s.
So these were traditional Christmas concerts that Mason would put on, but Time and Rivers Flowing, when did did he approach you and say, I want you to be part of this? How did he fill in the different cats like Latarsky and Blaine and people like that? That's amazing.
Well, that was just it was part of. Where did Time and Rivers Flowing start? I'm trying to remember when Mason came up with the idea for the album. I can't.
It's okay. Yeah, I think. more to the point, how did you get? Had you been working musically with him, with the Smothers Brothers, going way back, or I mean, or actually, no, I'm sorry, you were with him in the late '60s with Warrens, so your relationship goes way back.
Yeah, and then I've played with him ever since.
That is so beautiful to hear. Were you living in? You were still living in L.A., right? I mean, so
Yeah.
So how did that work? I mean, he'd get a budget together, and you'd go up and stay there for a few weeks and go on tour.
I'd go up and stay at his place or somebody else's, and hopefully in the summer so I could fish.
Oh, I dig. Cunha loves to fish. I got to go out fishing with you, man. So you go up there in the summer, and what do you remember when Kesey did come in? What did he bring to the table? Because none of you guys were. I mean, this guy Bill Barrett is a narrator and actor, but what is your memories of Kesey? Well, I remember Mason talking about, for God's sakes, I think Kesey was a pastor of some sort. I can't really remember, but what was your memory of him, and how did he take of Time and Rivers Flowing to the next level? Because I think you guys might have actually gone across the country with that gig.
Yes, I was not with the group that toured that. I don't know if it actually went across the country, but we played it out in Denver. And,
Colorado. That's right. That's what it is.
And places like that, I remember. And Kesey would come out and tell a story. He'd come out and tell a story.
What was in your mind? Who are the two greatest people you've ever met in your life?
Oh, geez, that's a rough one.
And I mean, like, going back and referencing Mason when he talked about Seeger and Kesey, because essentially they accepted. I'll just read you the exact thing that he said. The two people I met in my life who I thought were great men were Pete Seeger and Ken Kesey. Not only were they clever and could write great songs and great books, they were able to embrace all of humanity, warts and all, I guess you might say. All kinds of people would come by Ken's place and visit and talk, and they were welcome. Pete Seeger was always trying to improve the welfare of the common man. It was the broad love of humanity. Who falls into that category for Rick Cunha?
Oh, geez, I'd have to think about that, because those guys certainly did that for me too.
But you weren't nearly as close with either of them as Mason was.
No.
So in your mind, who were you close to that fits into that criteria?
Well, good. That's a good question.
No, I mean, we can pick it up. We're just getting started here. We can pick it up in part 2 if you want. I mean, this is really mercurial stuff. I mean, I love getting into this stuff, and you've contributed to our cultural heritage in a big way. But you had mentors and you had people that you looked up to, and I think it's important that those people aren't just remembered, but they're promoted for what they did and why they were inspiring people. Because right now, the only thing that we are going, as we enter into this period of darkness, because it's going to get very dark, the only thing that will keep us alive and well is spirit. Spirit is the key.
Well, that's the truth.
It is the truth. And before I let you go, we've just been cooking here and you've been phenomenal for 73 minutes.
Hi.
What is Rick Cunha's concept of love, and how do you bring love to the world? Right here, my friend. So I don't know if you want to write those questions down. We can pick it up in part 2. I mean, we got more to do.
Yeah, I've got to think about that. I don't want to be flippant with it.
No. So let's just stay in touch. I mean, do you have let me call you on my. Do you have an email? Because I just want to make sure I can get you a copy of this transmission, this interview. It's epic, and then ultimately, that Santa Claus story is going to be in this book. So I want to make sure that I get that to you, and so you can look it over and make sure it's accurate and everything.
Okay, well, I'll give you my email.
Let me call you on my. I don't want you to do it over the airwaves, where we have people listening all over the world. So I'll call you on my cell phone right after the interview. But I am so honored and humbled. Litarsky's actually. I'm in Tucson, and Litarsky's coming down here from Eugene. He's here right now, so we're going to get together again. But man, that dude is a freaking wizard, man.
He's a great player and great, good engineer. He's just got it all. Just
before I let you go, by the way, also I want to be clear on these tours with Time and Rivers Flowing. Hal Blaine would play drums live with you guys.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that is so great.
Yeah, Hal just loved to play.
Oh my God, dude. He just loved to play.
Yeah. And he was the drummer, boy. He was a great drummer.
Well, he could make any album swing so hard because he was raised by his black brothers playing bebop. He knew how to do it. And he was the man. And I had a chance to interview him too. We had a ball, but rest in peace. Anyway, Rick, have yourself a beautiful weekend, man, and I'll call you and get your contact info, and I hope you had a good time.
Okay, it was my pleasure, Jake.
Hey, man, good hang. Talk to you soon.
Yeah, you betcha.
All right, later, bro. Bye. Adding to the lineage of Ken Kesey, among other things. That's it for the Jake Feinberg Show. We'll be back on Power Talk. Until then, peace.